the ICT 24 call from the Commission called Next Generation Internet and Open Internet Initiative, Open Internet Architecture Renovation. And on the webinar, we have Luis Eduardo Martinez Lafuente from the European Commission. We have Jean-Luc from the Commission. We also have Sarah from a CSA supporting the NGI called Speak NGI. She will present the consultation platform. And we have also myself, Mirko Presser, who's also part of a CSA supporting the NGI called NGI Move. And we have our outside perspective from Mirko Ross, also present in the call. If you want to pitch at the end of the session, I would like it that you use the chat to make yourself known, to say that you would like to pitch. You get 2 minutes to introduce yourself, make a statement about your interest in the call, if you want to have other participants in your consortium, or if you want to be part of a consortium, or if you have a specific idea that how the call should be addressed. If you have questions during the presentations from the speakers, I would also like you to put it into the chat. I will read them out so that we don't get too much confusion, and then you can also clarify your question if you like. And we have at the very end of the call also a Q&A session for you to have anything that is still open or unclear to you to ask to any of the speakers or participants. So I would like to quickly make you also aware of all of the NGI activities that are ongoing at the moment. So on the NGI.EU website, you can go under Join NGI and find a number of activities, such as, for instance, the open calls that are now there. So the call that we're discussing is here, but there will be other open calls coming soon that will be launched by the already existing research and innovation actions that have been funded from the European Commission. But you can also join into the community by making yourself known on the NGI map, for instance, which is a tool to sort of geographically show the interest of participants in the NGI. You can participate to the consultation platform, which has a dedicated channel open, and Sarah will explain that in a little while. You had the chance to participate to the NGI awards. They have been closed for this past round, but will be open again in the new year. There's also the Global Internet Policy Observatory, the surveys, as well as various social media channels where you can subscribe to the NGI, as well as, of course, our newsletter. And finally, I would like to make you aware of also the NGI events. We have plenty of other events coming up, in particular from the 4th to the 6th of December, we are in Vienna at the ICT 2018 event. Where there's an NGI booth, as well as several NGI sessions, also info sessions about the calls, but also networking sessions where you can form consortia or discuss the topic of NGI in general. So at this point, I would like to hand over to Sarah, who will show you the consultation platform where you can have hopefully a very lively discussion about the topic today, but also other topics in the NGI. Sarah, could I hand over to you?
Yes. Thank you, Mirko. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, my name is Sara Pittonet. I am from Speak NGI, that, as Mirko said, is one of the support action supporting the NGI program of the European Commission. And I'm just here to say a few words about the consultation platform, which is basically a forum for discussion on the next generation internet, and it's there for you to share ideas and views on the forthcoming calls or on the work that you are doing. And it is there, it has two main, let's say, objectives. The first one is really to allow you to debate among yourself about ideas, future proposals, and other opportunities. And then, because all the content that is produced via the consultation platform will form It is part of a knowledge base that we are going to use to produce a yellow paper to be delivered early next year to the European Commission, collecting inputs and suggestions towards the future programs. So let me have a short demo with you of the consultation platform. So if you can see the screen, we have a main, slide, and you can already see as a first element the topic in the spotlight of today, which is the third topic of the NGI calls dedicated to open internet architecture and renovation. The consultation platform, as I said, works as a forum where you have discussion channels that you can enter, and where you can simply open new discussions if you want to suggest a topic for discussion, or where you can comment on already open discussions. So we really invite you to submit your ideas there, or to comment on the open ones. There are different channels open, so these three are dedicated to the calls currently opened, but there are also other ones which were already subject of discussion in the last months. And there is also one dedicated to the NGI participation at ICT 2018, as Mirko mentioned, where we are trying to gather ideas to be then mentioned and reused during the networking session that will take place there, or during the main conference session that will take place on the 5th of December. In addition to these forums, you can find some surveys, and we really invite you to have a look at them. They are very quick, but they are important for us to maximize your activities and identify any challenges or topics that are particular interest within the NGI community. And I particularly invite you to fill in the service dedicated to ICT 2018. It's really a few minutes service where we ask you a few questions that we were going to reuse in the session at ICT 2018 next week. And then you have the knowledge base, which collects all the information gathered through the consultation platform, and which is simple search facilities. And a new improved search facility is going to be launched in the next week. Last but not least, we have an early adopters club, which gathers innovators in the NGI panorama, in the NGI scene. And we are actually still collecting new applications from new early adopters. So I also invite you to have a look at the club that we have, and submit your application if you think that you're bringing some innovation in the NGI atmosphere, in the NGI framework. I think more or less that's it. The only thing I may share with you is the some more information about our presence at ICT in Vienna from the 4th to the 6th of December. So on the 4th, there will be the networking session starting at 4 p.m. And on the 5th of December, there will be the conference session starting at 2:30.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So in the meantime, I would invite Mirko Ross to switch over to his presentation. So if there's any questions, or if you would like to pitch later on, you're welcome to put your name into the chat, and I will do the first come, first serve. If you have any questions, I will read them out after the presentation, and Mirko can then answer them. So this is now an outside perspective for the call, and Mirko, the floor is all yours.
Yes, thanks for your introduction, Mirko, and yeah, it's Mirko too, speaking here, and yes, I just want to share my perspective on what could be one mission or vision towards the NGI initiatives. So the presentation here is when the zombie army is arriving, and what even like to discuss what does it mean maybe for the NGI and this open call. So just let me introduce myself. I'm CEO of DigitalWorks, and we have now also founded a new startup which is called NGI.EU, which mainly takes care on security and the Internet of Things. And besides that, I'm also engaged as researcher in different European or national activities, always related to the topic of Internet of Things. And I'm also one of the members of the ENISA expert group of IoT security. And we now have, even in the group now, I think 2 days ago, there was the new ENISA report on industrial IoT released, where I did some contributions and I was a review of the report. So yeah, let me just introduce to the topics with the zombies and what's all about it. It's just, I want to share the perspective of what does it mean if we talk about the current situation in the internet, and what does it mean to survive in the IoT and the internet world today, and how does it looks like towards our security. And security means really the question of safety and security, and even of privacy and trust. I think today the situation is a little bit like that. What we see is we've built our own compartments. That's the strategy we are working today, and we have built this kind of high walls that we're calling firewalls, and in front of the firewalls we have this kind of hostile attacks. We call it often zombies because it means that we have captured devices or captured gateways or captured servers which are used as a by foreign controlled forces to attack our compartment. And the strategy we have is just simple. We put up this walls, our firewalls, and we are standing as system administrators in front of the firewalls, and we are just watching these attacks, and normally the attackers can't intrude to our firewalls. And even, and this is also like in the zombie world, sometimes we put this kind of honeypots out there, which are attracting different attackers so that we can study them better and understand the attackers. Why is it that way? Because the internet is built that way, and even we have built the internet more and more in the last couple of years or centuries in a way that this is the security architecture, because mainly the internet was built as an open network, so everybody could access an IP address, and all what we have built now are this kind of shelters and compartments and walls. But I think we have to rethink this strategy. It's like there was a big shake in 2016 with the Mirai botnet, and even botnets have, of course, been a threat in the internet before, but with Mirai, we just have the situation that with the Internet of Things, we get the botnets more and more in a new way, a new botnet army. Even before Mirai, I think the main attacking vectors had been to just catch servers. And I mean, there are always a few servers out there with less and more vulnerabilities who can be catched by a botnet. But with the Internet of Things, we just multiplied that problem. And even we multiplied it in a way which is tremendous. It's like when Gartner predicts, for example, for the year 2020 that we get 20 billion internet devices connected, and all of them, for example, when they have a wireless LAN module on it, even all these devices have the functionality to be a server, and they're running a completely Linux system on there. And even now for the gateways, we know that almost the most gateways are already shipped with vulnerabilities. So all of them could be potential parts of botnets. And by Mirai, we've seen that that even the makers of Mirai had been rather surprised how successful the IoT botnet was, and Mirai was just had become a tool to start really big attacks in a way we had never seen before. For example, for denial of service attacks as a ranked weapon. And I mean, the solution we had before Mirai, just to put up the firewalls, this was maybe pretty good. But after Mirai, we have to think about the zombies, because, I mean, this was a couple of zombies. After Mirai, we have to think about how we can survive in the IoT world of today and maybe of tomorrow, and how do we rethink our strategies. Because with Mirai, the situation will be look more like that. And this means, okay, we can build higher firewalls, great. But what if this kind of attacks are getting as strong, as powerful, that even it's easily for an attacker from an economic perspective to tear down our firewalls? And what should we do as a defender? I mean, is our answer simple to put much more efforts in better firewalls? I believe that we will run into an economic problem, that defending is much more expensive in an economic way than for the attackers to attack. Mirai was a rather cheap weapon, and that's really a problem. We can't. Our answer can't be to build better firewalls or higher firewalls or better compartments. We have to rethink about the internet architecture at this point. So, what are the challenges we see? First of all, as I said before, higher firewalls can be overcome easily by these massive attacks and by this, and even as it is from an economical perspective, rather easy for the attackers to run these massive attacks. So the IoT security is running into this kind of economic trade-offs, which also means as a vendor that you really have to make this decision how secure you are shipping a device in the future. Then what we see is like with the cloud movement of the past years, I mean, the internet was really built rather decentralized. That was the main idea. But with the cloud movement, we have now pushed back the internet in a more centralized service. And I mean, centralized services are rather vulnerable for this kind of attacks. So with the centralized structures, we are feeding the attacker because there's an economic attraction. If I can tear down, for example, a cloud service of a company just for ransom, it means that I can gain massive economic revenues as an attacker by really a small economic stake I have to put in for that kind of attacks. So if we think all about that and what's going on out there, maybe it's better to accept that being unsecured and infected is the new normal. But by the current situation of the internet and how it is built, with the centralized structures and our firewall idea, I think we can't accept that because we are so vulnerable. So the main question is in what directions we should think to accept this new normal. So what we see is that we need a survival program. This means we need, of course, to be personally engaged, but we need the right tools. And the right tools means we have to fight. This is more like the internet was more a neutral zone. It's no more neutral before. So what do we see, or what do we see as a need? I think, first of all, we have to think about, can we build a kind more of self-healing IoT and internet infrastructure? What does it mean? It means like by the architecture itself, can we identify, for example, weak points in weak devices? And if we have identified this kind of weak devices and weak points, can we go into two options? First, the option is, can we heal, of course, this this weak point, which means, for example, can we update or patch it? But on the other side, maybe we have to accept that there's no healing, no more possible, so we have to even accept that we have maybe to kill weak points. This means put weak points out of service because they are too dangerous for the overall system. This is rather similar to a human body and how evolution has trained our human body to fight against diseases. It's rather a similar way. Second, I think we have to strengthen the resilience, and there are now several technologies popping up which are more distributed, like DAG graphs, blockchain, IPFS. I think they are all going into this direction to build stronger resilient services. By that, I think, as we have seen now, this kind of big movement toward the clouds and centralization, we'll now see a swing back more towards decentralized technologies. So they had been before, even rather successful before the cloud. Remember all the peer-to-peer technologies, but even they had some weak points as well, because that cloud becomes so successful. But now we have new technologies, and we can see that there are good arguments to introduce, again, more peer-to-peer technologies. Then I think what we also have to consider in this kind of new structures are these abilities for self-healing automations, which is not also mean that we need self-healing, but we need this kind of automated procedures. So what does it mean? It means like patching vulnerabilities automatically, or kill a service if it's not more, if there's no more possibility to patch it. And at least whatever we do, as the internet, as the core idea of the internet was always open source and open, I think, and we also see with the cloud that this has also this kind of swing back, because more and more services are getting this kind of software as a service services that we have even to swing back more into this kind of open source, because otherwise we are not getting the security and the trust back into the services we have seen there. So that's our perspective, and what we think, what we can also say as an outsider, what could be solutions or objectives to manage these future challenges, and even to the NGI open call. Yes, and by that I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and cheers to you if we have all managed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mirko. Are there any immediate questions? Then please post your questions into the chat for later. So I would like to invite Jean-Luc to present the Commission's introduction to the call and the details about the call.
Yes, no problem. Just a sec. So you should be able to see my presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Can
Perfect.
you hear me well also?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. First, thanks you, Mirko, for setting up this event, as well as Luis for the IT and preparation, and the colleagues that were involved. Also, thanks the other Mirko for the presentation we've just seen, with a strong focus on IoT. And actually, this is one part of the larger picture, which includes AI, cloud, robotics, and IoT, which are somehow the sensor part of the whole body, and that is connected together by the internet. So the internet is really the nervous network that connects all these pieces together, and it's very important that we have a focus on its evolution, and that's one of the rationale behind the Next Generation Internet Initiative that I will explain in few slides, and then I will dig into the details of the topic that we are dealing today, which is the renovation, and it's very linked with this notion that the internet is at a tipping point. We have pushed a narrative where we call for a human-centric internet. In other words, an internet that is serving the interest of humans according to values that are commonly shared in Europe and beyond Europe, with, for instance, the human rights. It's as opposed to the evolution, the current internet, which to a large extent is observing what we are doing and valuing that, and for which we don't have too much information. So we are going to push values like openness, but also transparency, accessibility, protection against hate speech, against privacy breaches, or protecting the weakest people, the kids. So these are values that we commonly share in Europe. This narrative has been very much taken up now. Just few examples. It was taken up, of course, by our key leaders at the Commission. So, for instance, Timmermans, the senior vice president at the NGI summit last year, talked about a next generation internet that must be more than the internet of things. It must be the internet of values. Maria Gabriel herself, she mentioned a human-centric internet that will be trustworthy, resilient, sustainable, inclusive. So that's pretty much the keywords that we have in the topic today. She also mentioned a human-centered digital ecosystem based on people and values. Recently, Tim Berners-Lee urged to develop the technology that support the best in humanity and challenge the worst. So the web really is a public good that put people first in this new proposed contract for the web. And even more recently at the Internet Governance Forum in Paris, the French President Macron stated that the time has come to think over the ways and means of putting technology and power to the service of the fundamental values of humanity. So it's going to be a main driver in our intervention, including our funding intervention. This is the human-centric internet. So it has some practical implication in terms of control by the end user, more transparency, more choices that the end user could benefit from, more accessibility also. The other dimension of this program, the Open Internet Initiative program, is a fact, is an evidence that a lot of talents, European talents that actually do things for the internet, that impact the internet in terms of coding, in terms of development, are not very well associated with H2020. There are many communities of developers, of operators, open source, hackers, independent, consultant, SMEs, startups, etc. In the broad communities that consider it's a too high barrier to enter in the Horizon 2020 program. So that's why we have put in place a program that not only push this vision of internet-centric internet, but also specifically target these internet innovators. And for doing that, we have implemented a program that has already been in action for Work Program 2018, and that is now continuing for 19, which is a two-step funding. So Commission is very good in planning things on the very long term and embark with large communities. This is very relevant in many fields of science, but it's not necessarily the best things for the internet. So the classical instrument and planning is not going to be used here. And one of the reasons is that if you design, for instance, a program in year one, that is, you do consultation and you identify priorities, you will have the call year 2, you will have the awards year 3, and the time of the work will make the results available year 6. So it will happen, there will be 6 years between ideas and results. And again, it is very, very good in some science field, but in 6 years the internet will completely change. And if you look back 6 years ago, there was no blockchain, no container technologies, and many other things that happened. So we are going to give money to intermediaries, which will bring a bit of latency in the system. So there is a bit of a paradox here. But once the money is given to intermediaries, there will be a much more dynamic process afterwards. So intermediaries will get 7 million euros. They have to implement research and innovation actions. We are calling for Work Program 2019 3 topics. Strengthening internet trustworthiness with electronic identity, so everything related to electronic identities as an anchor point. Service and data portability, so crossing platforms and domains and borders. And the topic that we are dealing with today, which is open internet architecture renovation. Intermediaries will receive 7 million euro, and 80% of this amount will go to third parties, or otherwise called subgrantees. So that's 5.6 million euro, and what remain in the consortium is 1.4 million euro. So we push this notion of funding of third party to the limit, and we expect intermediaries to be, of course, and have a very good understanding of the topics, in that case the open internet architecture renovation, and we expect them to be able to attract the talent that I mentioned, and to lower the barrier, the administrative barrier to entrance into the funding through fast and flexible, continuously agile calls. And we also expect them to provide a range of services that I will describe just afterwards. Concerning the subgrantees, they can be one legal entity, but also they can be a multiple. They will make a proposal, arguable or presumably in a relatively simple form, because as I said, we want to lower the barrier to entrance. And we are expecting them to be what I said, that is young researcher, outstanding academics, high-tech startups, technology researching SMEs, etc. We are not excluding anybody by definition, so it can be a large corporation, but it's relatively unlikely to happen. And they will do the research work, the research and innovation work. So in other words, the intermediaries, even though they have to understand the topic and to be specialists, or to have demonstrate the ability to attract talents and be able to evaluate the proposal, they will not carry out research themselves. This will be done by innovators and in the form of small grants. So here the word is small is beautiful. Small grants and small consortium and small duration. Here are the indication that is given in a work program. This is 50 to 200K as typical range of funding. Can be even below, cannot be more, that's for sure. Duration between 9-12 months. This is typical duration. So, as I said, there are some specifics that we ask in the work program for intermediaries. We are explicitly looking at coaching and mentoring capabilities. So the consortium must have expertise and scale to a relatively large number of projects and individuals in terms of coaching and mentoring, both on the technical seniority and technical advice and a business to understand how this development can fit in a larger picture. The beneficiary, the intermediaries, one of the essential demonstrations they have to do is their capacity to attract top internet talents and provide added value services to them. And it can be in the form of advice. Again, it can be services in terms of audit of the code that is developed, or checking the security quality of the code or the documentation and things like that, IPR regime, etc. So as part of horizontal services advising all the subgrantees. And they also have to demonstrate, of course, their capability to handle the open call process transparently. So from publication, publicity, evaluation, granting, and execution of the project, all through these life cycles, they have to demonstrate their capacity in the proposal. Just a reminder, is the 80% rule, which basically exclude the de facto the consortium to do research itself, because with 1.4 million and all these things to do, there is no room or little room for doing actual research. So that's the role of intermediaries. That's what we are looking for as part of this call, Work Program 2019, in these three areas. Now I'm going to look a little bit more detail into, in service and data portability. The money will be channeled to the consortium through a research and innovation action, which means costs will be reimbursed 100%. It's already open. Deadline is end of March 2019. So we are in the right time to discuss, to expose our ideas, but also for potential bidder to discuss their idea and start building consortium. I think November, December, and up to January is the right timeline. And now, for what concern, so the title of this slide is wrong. Sorry for that. It should be related to open internet architecture, even though the slide is the same. So, in my introduction, I mentioned the network to be the gluing part of the AI, the cloud capacity, which is the brain, if you like, as well as the memory, or the neurons and the memory. The sensor, the IoT, the hands and legs, robotics, and the question is it designed to glue all these things together? I think the presentation from Mirko identified a number of clear challenges in relation to the IoT part, notably. And this led us to the conclusion that a serious attempt to renovate the architecture was necessary. So the Open Internet Architecture renovation will support communities of developers that will ensure this evolution and will ensure its efficiency, scalability, security, and resilience towards this objective of a human-centric internet, and towards this objective of doing more with the IT and with the services. So in that context, auditing, testing, and improving protocols and open source software and hardware is encouraged. the one that are used to manage the internet, to run the internet. And there is a renewed call for isolation of contingencies, redundancy, self-repair, disruption tolerance, transparency, real-time behavior, better real-time behavior, and energy efficiency. So, and one last point is a scalability. It's twice in the work program, so it shows that as we move into more utilization of informatic tools, internet must have a renewed charter to scale IoT, cloud connection, AI, algorithms, etc. So that's the general scope of this architecture. I think in the next iteration we'll have some examples and a bit more illustrative. It was not possible for this presentation, but certainly for ICT 2009, the ICT event in Vienna early December, we will have slightly more detail. But from this work program, you can easily understand that we are going to look at the perimeter of the internet, which tool, and we are going to look at the protocols, as well as the software and hardware that are accessible. So it's very much matching the perimeter of the Internet Engineering Task Force, for instance, the software in relation to the network layer, the transport layer, the DNS, all these the security layers, all these layers that are part of the infrastructure and used on a daily basis, and make sure that it evolves in a direction that is what we want, and that is described in this work program. So there will be more events and more way to interact with the potential bidder, either in the form of plenary like ICT 2018, but also in the form of events in countries. There was one in UK, and there will be one in Sweden soon, so organized by a national contact point. And this is just the beginning of this discussion with potential bidder. You are a number in this call, and feel free to position yourself or to ask a question, and we'll be happy with Mirko and colleagues to interact with you. So with that, I'll leave you the floor to you, Mirko.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Are there any questions? I have no questions in the chat, no comments for pitching, and if nobody speaks up now, then we might have to carry on without any other comments. So I think if anyone on the call believes that they would like to put in a bid for the ICT 24, I think it would be very advantageous to hear your pitch now, to maybe mobilize some other participants to connect with you. Or if you were looking for a consortium to bid for this particular call, you can also just add your details into the chat or just speak up right now.
Yes, Mirko.
Yep.
Mirko here.
Yes.
I think I mean what I have showed is just some things which are going around in our mind, and I think this is matching perfectly to even what Jean-Luc said, because it's, of course, I was talking about the Internet of Things, but the underlying technology is Internet, and even we have just this kind of particular view on Internet of Things as we see it now as the majority of participants in this kind of network, and this majority is causing the problems for all the other, even for the humans inside, but it's all interconnected. Yeah, I mean, we are frankly open. We have several ideas. We are already working on stuff beside R&D or any European programs, because we think it's important. And just we are open to participate on stuff if it's going into this kind of perspective of new protocols, resilience, open source, and decentralized structures. That's just what we can offer. So if there is anyone out there who wants to work with that or going into cooperation with that, just get in touch with me.
Okay, and I will share your slides, Mirko. That's going to get uploaded, including with the recording of this as well. But in the meantime, you can also post your contact details in the chat. I can see that Pekka has already done that. Pekka, would you also like to say a few words to your interest?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm these days a professor at Aalto University, but I have a long history in the internet architecture. I was an IETF member from around 2092, if I remember, to 2011. I was to the IAB for a while. I mostly worked with the so-called information-centric networking architectures for a while. But my research recently has been in other areas. But I would be perhaps interested in joining some consortium, mostly in this kind of an advisor role.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Then Jean-Luc, do you have any last comments, or Louis?
Nothing from my side, no.
Okay, then Sarah, do you have any last comments on the consultation platform?
Actually, this is Adrian Perrig. I have a quick question.
Hi, Adrian. Yep, please.
Okay. So I was wondering, actually, if you're one of these intermediaries, how is it then you're mainly distributing projects then to other entities, but then yourself, you obviously cannot do the research yourself, right? I mean, how is the conflict of interest managed? You know, you couldn't fund your own research projects, right, through that, through such a program.
I think this question should be answered by the Commission, but I think, yeah,
yes,
please, Jean-Luc.
Can you hear me?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so this is Jean-Luc from European Commission. Yeah, so if, for instance, the intermediary, there is a large university, of course, it may be very well be that potential third parties can sit in this university, of course, or large research institution. In that case, the proposals and the bidders, they have to demonstrate that they put in place the right mechanisms to avoid precisely this question of conflict of interest. So it can be, for instance, external experts that will evaluate proposals. It can be also the notion of a Chinese wall between the project office and any parties in the institution. So that there is a fully isolated work and completely independent. So at the end, there is nothing preventing this situation, but it has to be clear at the proposal level what sort of mechanism will be put in place to avoid any situation of conflict of interest, as well also as ensuring fairness of the process and full transparency. That's the main thing.
So how large do you actually envision to be such an intermediary? Do you envision being a partnership between industry, academia, government, or would it be 3 parties, 4 parties, 5 parties, or ideally a single party who has a lot of experience. I think Martel is doing some of these things, for instance, for Fed for Fire in a similar constitution.
Yeah, okay, so Fed for Fire has a small amount of money, if I remember, for third parties, or maybe not that small, maybe something like 50%. Here we are doing 80%. But what I want to answer your question is that in principle there is no prescription on what should be the consortium, except that it should come from at least 3 organizations from member states and associated countries. That's the only legal requirement. So we may have consortia proposal with 3 partners, and we may have other with 15. And actually, if you look at the portfolio of the first call, we have a consortia with, I think, 4 partners, and we have another one with 14. So there is no also prescription on what sort of balance between industry, academia, and others might well be, and we don't push any partner or any organization that may or may not have existing projects. The only thing is that the proposal has to follow what the work program is asking for, which I repeated at least part of it in my slides, and I really invite potential bidder to look carefully at what is requested by the work program. It's for intermediaries. It's relatively specific, and demonstrate the capabilities with regard to each and every of these requirements. And the cascading, if there is experience, or if you demonstrate you understand very well how it works, I mean that's a very important part of the evaluation.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Mirko, I just wanted to have a final comment from my side. We are so the call is accessible through the participant portal, and there are already some there, because Commission is doing its own, of course, help for consortia building. So there are already there some messages or proposal from potential bidder to build consortia. So I invite you, as part of ICT 24 in our program 2019, to look at the participant portal, and this is complementary to the NGI.EU and the platform. That is also an additional layer or a source of information and interested parties.
Okay, thank you very much. And in the chat there has been a little bit of activity. I think if there are no other comments now, then I would say I would like to thank Sarah, Jean-Luc, Louis, and Mirko for their time, and also all the participants for their time and contributions. And all the best of luck for bidding for ICT 24. And hope to see you in Vienna on the 4th to the 6th for the ICT in December, 4th to 6th of December at the ICT 18 at the NGI booth. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.